important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this Degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
Really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and degens of all ages. Welcome back to another fitness stream. I'm already stumbling over my words. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. But anyways, yes, welcome everybody. If you've tuned into our previous shows, you know that these streams are all about fitness, health, nutrition, trying to get yourself in shape because, as we've said many times on here, health is wealth. If you get wealthy and you don't have good health, you're going to mostly spend that wealth on trying to restore that health that you lost. So we're trying to get into ahead of that kind of situation and get our health on track right away. No reason to wait on it. That's kind of the main goal here. So it's been a little while since we've done one of these streams, and a big part of that was I have been super busy. Some of you who tune into our regular shows might already have heard about this, but I started vending finally for Pokemon stuff. So I've been spending the last few months getting that all set up, and I had my first show at the very end of June. So June 29th, and that went great. I've got 2 more set up for this month, later on in this month. And it's just been a big, crazy time getting all that figured out. And another thing that I am kind of going through right now is I finally left the app that I've been helping with their Facebook group for about 2 years. They're very, very large. They're over 200,000 members, and I left, and it wasn't the modding position. I still host meetups with them, but leaving the modding position has been really hard. It wasn't exactly something I wanted to do. It's something I've struggled with for a very long time because I wanted to stick with it kind of for the wrong reasons. I wanted it to become something more. It became clear that it was never going to be what I wanted it to be, so I finally had to kind of take that plunge, but it's been hard because I do miss it, and it's just hard to say goodbye to something that you got really attached to. So that's what's been going on, and why these streams have been a little less frequent, but I'm hoping to get them back on track now. So here we are. It's a Monday. I've got Jay here. We're going to talk about stalls and setbacks and kind of get some tips and tricks, pick Jay's brain a little bit on that subject. And then I'll go over kind of, I'm going to be revamping what I've been doing because basically I've just been in one big stall. I started on the carnivore diet I think it's been about almost 3 months, and it's just been doing nothing for me. And I am feeling defeated, especially with losing Finch and trying to figure out kind of this like little business venture. It's just been a rough month, basically. But anyways, yeah, that's the long and short of it. That's kind of the update on what's been going on. And yeah, I'm ready to hop right into it if you are, Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, perfect. All right, so Jay and I have spoken before about things like food tracking. Food tracking is something that I hate doing. One of the main reasons being it just is really time consuming for me. I don't eat usually like prepackaged stuff, so I go and buy like veggies from the produce section. And in order to figure out what's in those when it comes to all these numbers that you need to track, you have to Google it, weigh the stuff out. It's a lot of extra work when it's like, I just want to grab a meal from the kitchen and move on with my day. But again, I've been stalling on carnivore for like 3 months, and that's weird because carnivore is supposed to be a pretty extreme diet where it's supposed to hit you pretty hard, especially if it's not something that your body is used to. So if your body's used to all these carbs and sugar, going like basically carnivore is basically almost no carbs. Just that switch, usually from what I understand, should be a pretty big difference for your body, and you should start seeing results pretty fast. So to have stalled out as badly as I have been, I'm figuring I got to track at least for a little while, figure out kind of why it's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe look into whatever other factors may be going into that. I know we've talked about like stress and hormones and all that stuff. So it could be a combination of things. So with getting rid of Finch, I'm hoping I'll have a little bit less stress to worry about. And then now with tracking food, I'm hoping I can kind of really dig into what exactly is going on here, why this isn't really working for me. I want to do a couple of other medical things. I won't go into too many details on that, but the main would be James, who is one of the gentlemen who's in our Telegram, talks about it all the time. I really want to get a DEXA scan done, and I want to find out what my resting metabolic rate is. So I think with that information, I can hopefully kind of, dig into this, figure out what's going on, figure out why it's been stalling so badly and just not really going anywhere, and kind of revamp it, restart it, get back out there. And then the other big thing, I just talked to one of my friends, and we have set up a goal to accomplish every day to get 10,000 steps. So I'm going to be really trying to hit that.
Very
because
nice.
I don't count my steps. My phone's not great for it. And I did get a step counter, but then I lost the stupid thing. So I found that. So that's going to be coming back around with me. I got to remember to use it. But yeah, so that's kind of my updates with everything. For diet wise, I think I'm mostly going to stick with the same types of ideas, mostly carnivore with a little bit of veggies, and then kind of have a freer day on Saturday. But the difference for the big difference is going to be tracking. And then obviously those free days, I'm going to try and track that too. Or no, sorry, that free meal, which it might be a little bit difficult because a lot of restaurants are hard to track with. A lot of them don't have that information readily available. So that one will be a little bit of a challenge, but I'll have to find places that do have that info and kind of go from there. All right. With that said, those are all my updates and kind of my new plans. Jay, how have you been? Do you want to go jump right into tips and tricks? You want to give us a little update on how you've been doing? I know your family has also been doing some dietary stuff that's been going really good for them. So if you want to chat about that, I would love to hear more.
Yeah. So my in-laws have been, they started off on using a meal prep service. They use the Factor, which plenty of you might be familiar with. It's one of the more popular meal prep services out there. And it makes things very easy for them because everything comes pre-packaged. All that they have to do is pop it in the microwave, heat it up for a couple minutes, and everything is done for them. The nutrition label is there. It tells them how many proteins, fats, and carbs are there. They don't have to shop. They don't have to cook. They don't have to prep. They don't have to pack. Everything is done for them. So they started off with that, got a ton of good results. Between my in-laws, they lost, I think, a total of anywhere between 100 pounds, like 80 to 100 pounds. Teresa actually has stalled quite a bit on her end. So we're trying to figure out how to jumpstart her weight loss again. But Kevin has still been going strong. He's about 10 pounds away from his goal weight. So I believe it's like around 160 pounds. So with him, he's lost close to 100 pounds in total. And they started off with the Factor stuff. What I liked about the Factor, aside from all the benefits that we already mentioned, right? The not having to worry about shopping, cooking, prepping, packing, all that stuff, was that it gave the both of them a really good idea of what a decent meal looks like if they were to recreate it themselves. And it taught them a lot about the portion sizes. So, okay, here's what a decent quote unquote meal looks like: a little bit of veg, protein, a little bit of carb. And then it also showed them what the portion sizings of those look like. And so it gave them a really good foundation, a jumping off point that they have taken, because now that they're off of Factor, they prep all of their meals themselves now. It gave them a really solid foundation to jump off from. So they have some basic knowledge of what good nutrition looks like, which a lot of people lack. So in that aspect, they've been doing really well. My good buddy Cars, who started on his fitness journey, I mentioned him before. He's the guy that came to me and he wanted to start training regularly because he was overweight and he's an avid gun enthusiast. So he started signing up for competition. He's been going to the range and he noticed that his weight had a significant negative impact on his ability to perform, and it's something that he really loves to do. So he started training with me and he's seen a lot of good results. Less on the weight loss side, although he's lost a pretty decent amount of weight as well, but more on all of the things that a lot of folks don't really tend to measure. Because most people, when they go on a fitness journey, it's the end goal is weight loss. For him, it was more skill acquisition, getting his foundational baseline of fitness up. So his sleep quality is up, his quality of life in general is up, his stress is down, he's more energetic throughout the day. And so he's noticed all of those positive benefits just from regular resistance training. And we don't do anything crazy, you know. We have a very basic program for him, hitting all of the major muscle groups, the major movements. And that's really all. That's really all it takes. You don't. The old saying goes, "Keep it simple, stupid," and that applies a lot to fitness and nutrition as well. So that's what I have for fitness updates. For myself, it's like I don't really have much to update. I think I may be considering competing in powerlifting again. I am like 2 weight classes down from when I competed back in like 2016. I competed between 2016 and 2020, and I'm like 2 weight classes down. I used to compete between the 74 and the 83 kilo weight class, which is between 165 to 184 pounds. And my walking weight now is in like the mid 140s. So about 2 weight classes down. So I'm gonna see how I can how I can perform relative to my old numbers in 2 lower weight classes. But I feel good. So we'll see where that goes. But that's where I'm at in terms of my potential fitness goals. But other than that, not really much else has changed. So
Hey, well, that's exciting. That sounds
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, stepped away from the sport for a considerable amount of time, let my body recover because, man, powerlifting beats you up something fierce. But I think it's, you know, circling back to your goals and the changes that you wanted to make. I think it is a very good idea that you want to start tracking your meals, like weighing things out. Like you mentioned, we've spoken about and you've tried your hand at tracking meals, and tracking is not for everybody. And I mentioned that to you when we started working together. And I remember telling you that a lot of people find a lot of great results and they don't have to get the tracking route. However, what a lot of people find is that they inevitably hit the wall that you've been hitting. And the wall in this case is they have a significant stall in their weight loss. And that doesn't always happen for everybody, but it happens to a significant majority of people, because tracking, just like what my in-laws did when they did the meal prep service, what tracking does is it really opens up your eyes as to exactly how many extraneous calories that you could be potentially consuming. A lot of my clients that I've worked with in the past, whenever they hit that wall, and they tell me, hey, I'm in a calorie deficit, why am I not losing weight? The first place that I usually attack is, let's go over your journal, right? Because I have my clients journal everything. Whatever doesn't get tracked doesn't get managed, as they say. And so we go over their journal and I look at everything and everything looks to be doing well. But then then I ask them, like, hey, do you graze during the day? And grazing meaning, if you work at an office job, they usually have a cafeteria. There's a lot of snacks. There's a lot of free food. There's free drinks. And there's a tendency to people to like, hey, there's a handful of chips here, handful of mixed nuts there. When they're cooking at home, they might have a glass of wine here, add a bit of oil there that doesn't get tracked. And all of those extraneous calories can really add up to a significant amount, especially throughout the week. That could really derail your weight loss. And so what tracking does is it really shows you, like meticulous tracking, it really shows you like those blind spots that you've had before you went on to tracking. And it's not something that you have to do forever. Like for me now, I'm around, I've gone your route. There's this shift that happens in people where in the beginning, right, we go, for folks like you who didn't really want to do tracking, we go, all right, I just want you to keep track of your protein, but that's it, right? I want to make sure you're hitting the requisite amount of protein, and that's it. You don't got to track anything else. And then they hit a wall, and we go to a tracking phase, and they see just exactly their blind spots. And then they do that for a significant period of time, and they have an idea of what proper meals look like, what a portion size of protein, carbs, and fat look like. And then eventually, right, as you mature throughout that process, what a lot of people find is they revert back to what step one was, which is just that intuitive eating. Intuitive, not in the sense that you're just like, oh, that's not intuitive in the classic sense. Intuitive meaning that you know what a proper portion size meal is, and you know what the relative calorie, protein, fats, and carbs amounts of the things that you're eating are. And for me, that's the point in my journey. That's where I am, where I can maintain this relatively like low body weight, still keep losing weight. And I don't have to meticulously track everything, because you have that foundation, that you have that foundational knowledge that you've built up over years or so of tracking. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to take years, but it is going to take some time. And I think that's the like the inevitable next step for you and a lot of people who find themselves in a position similar to you, right? Because you have to be aware of everything that goes into like that goes into your mouth, right? Because otherwise you just don't know. Like you just don't know. You might think that you were eating under a calorie deficit, and then you go through an entire week's worth of tracking. You track your proteins, your carbs, your fats, the oils that you're using, and you're like, wow, I thought I was like eating 2,000 calories. When in reality, I'm eating close to 2,500, 3,000 calories, and an extra 1,000 calories over the span of an entire week, right, can significantly derail or stall a weight loss journey. And unless you're somebody you're one of those rare people who might be suffering from some kind of actual hormonal balance, some kind of chemical imbalance. Maybe you have a predisposition for things like thyroid malfunction, things of that nature. Unless you have a specific medical reason that's causing the stall in weight loss, for the majority of population who experience that stall, it's usually from, lack of a better term, from overeating in the calorie department, right? Just because they're not tracking. And so I think you making this transition to starting to track things meticulously, it's going to open up your eyes, right? And it's also going to show you exactly where your blind spots are in terms of your prior eating habits. And I think that's just gonna move you forward in terms of future weight loss. But that's my initial thoughts on the transition there.
Yeah, which is exactly the goal. I think that's pretty much what I'm aiming for here. When I did track back when we had originally started working together on that program, the one thing that I found out that was pretty shocking to me is just how much, even if you're drinking like no calorie drinks, which I mostly do, how much alcohol itself will add.
Yes.
The alcohol is basically no carbs for hard liquor anyways. So like vodka, rum, just the straight stuff, not the like margarita mixes that you can buy in stores. That stuff's all full of sugar and carbs. You got to look into that stuff. But like straight alcohol, no carbs, but it is very high in calories.
Yes.
So that was
calorie in that sense, unfortunately. Yeah. Right.
Yes, exactly. So that was kind of hard to find out, because when I tried keto in the past, I didn't track calories at all. They just said, track the carbs, carbs, proteins, and fats. And so it's like, okay, alcohol is basically, you can have it whenever you want. Come to find out that even though like it's technically true because there's no carbs in it, your body will still use up that first and burn through that instead of burning through your fat. And you can very easily have 1,000 calories in alcohol without even noticing.
Alcohol at 7 calories per gram. Second only to fat, which is 9 calories per gram.
Yeah,
so that is a very big revelation to a lot of people. So I'm glad you found that out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so that's a big jump. So that is another thing that I will be doing, is I'm going to go back to limiting alcohol only on Fridays and Saturdays. I'll be having it those 2 days. And again, I'll track it and do my best with it. Alcohol nights are mine and Nate's nights to unwind. So that one was a little difficult to kind of make sure I was keeping track of, because I would try to kind of predict how much we'd have but then as the night wears on, and obviously as you're getting drunk, you might not be properly tracking it anymore. But I will do my best with that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of the more challenging parts of this for sure.
What I recommend, Cass, to a lot of people is that I know you want to make an attempt to track things when you're going out with Nate. And if I can offer some advice, during those times when you're just trying to enjoy a moment to relax with your husband, like away from the stress, away from work, away from the kids, don't worry about tracking, right? Have a glass of wine or a glass of champagne or a beer if that floats your boat, and then have the meal that you guys are gonna have, and just enjoy it. Right? Don't stress about it. And if you really want to be like, okay, but I don't want to go over on my calorie amount, what I would suggest is during those days when okay, I know that on Saturday we're going to have a meal out and it's something that's going to be difficult to track. And even if they have the nutrition facts, I'm not going to know exactly what. What a lot of people do, and what I do personally, what I recommend to others, is that you can just fast for the whole day and just leave that meal at the end of the day. So even if you're consuming a meal that's like maybe 1,000 calories, you're having a glass of wine that's probably another 100 or 200 or so, you're not going over your calories. If you still want to hit your protein, you can just be like, okay, throughout the day, I'm just going to have my protein shakes. I'm going to have a protein shake in the morning. I'm going to have a protein shake in the afternoon. So I'm at least hitting my protein requirements. And then at the end of the day, I'll have the rest set aside for some carbs and for some fats and for a little bit of alcohol that I don't have to worry about tracking because I know I'm under for the day, right? And you could just spend that time with your husband and not have to worry about the stress, because it's been my experience and the experience of a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my clients that when people get really serious about the tracking stuff, and they have to track every single meal, it injects a lot of strain into their own personal relationships. If you and Nate were doing it together, that'd be a different story, right? But if you have to modify and try to fit even that small meal that you're supposed to be having together, that you're supposed to be enjoying together at the end of the week, that can introduce more stress than you might want to deal with in their relationship, right? So that's just my personal piece of advice, right? I hit your protein with a protein shake, or you can just fast for the whole day. That way, you don't have to worry about tracking that meal at the end of the night because you're going to be under regardless.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think that's great advice. Yeah, so for sure, yeah, no, definitely, something to consider is don't give up your whole life to try and be too stringent because one thing that I have heard from this actually came from a doctor who I was talking to about nutrition, and she said one thing you got to look at when you're starting a new diet is, do you like the foods in it? Because if you're going into a diet where you don't like anything you're going to have access to, you're just not going to stick with it. It would be a terrible idea. So I think this is kind of similar. If you're being so stringent with tracking everything that you stop enjoying everything in life because you're just being too worried about it. First, you're adding a whole lot of stress, which can stall as well, as we've talked about before. And second, like you said, the strain in the interpersonal relationships might not be worth it. There's also something to be said for, I know some people who do, I was in a keto community for a little while. I think I am still in it, but I haven't seen it in a long time because when I got pregnant with Soren, I stopped worrying about keto. But I haven't seen them in a while, but I know some people were talking about the feedback they got from going out to hang out with friends. They would be on their diet and they'd only eat very specific things, and people would get frustrated with them or like personally attack them over it. And I think that's kind of because there's a little bit of a stigma when somebody is that health conscious and that stringent, other people feel like it's somehow a criticism towards them. And therefore they may lash out as a response. So some people had difficulties with that. And the general idea was just like, just don't mention that you're on keto, just, get a salad and kind of hope nobody notices, which is pretty fair idea if you're not comfortable with talking to them about it. But yeah, so I think from what I'm hearing from you, food tracking is actually a good idea to work out a stall to try and figure out why you're stalling and maybe get
Yep.
over it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because at the end of the day, I know a lot of people don't like the idea when it boils down to everything, when you boil it down to brass tacks, everything is a math equation when it comes to weight loss. Right? Yes, it seems very reductionist, and it is, but at the base, that's all it is. There's a lot of different variables that go into that math equation, but at the end of the day, it is a math equation. If you're consuming more than you expend throughout the day, or just consume enough to maintain the weight, you're not going to lose it, right? And so that's why the tracking has to be a part of a lot of people's nutrition journey. Just like if you were trying to learn how to budget your finances, right? If you wanted to budget your finances, but you didn't know how much you spent on rent, on gas, on utilities, on insurance, on internet, on how much you were spending eating out, but then you were like, you know what? I'm not going to go shopping. I'm going to stop shopping for material things that I don't really need so I could save money. But you still spend a whole bunch of money eating out. Then you're net negative at the end of the month. And you're like, what's happening? I thought just stopping spending, stopping my shopping habits would help me save money. But then you don't realize that you still spent a significant amount of your income eating out, right? It's the same thing. I like using the finances because the finances analogy, because it's a lot easier for people to see, right? The budgeting thing, and it's the same thing. It's a lot of the same thing with weight loss, although a little bit more difficult because the human body is just a mix of an infinite amount of variables that are always interacting with each other, and it is, at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that affect weight loss. It is not as simple as a math equation, but at the end of the day, it is a math equation. So yeah, going the tracking route, at least for I would say at least for 3 to 6 months, I think would benefit you significantly.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And one thing that explanation that you just went through really made me think of, I started using a credit card that gives cash back for everything I buy, and then just paying that off because basically, it's free money. There's no reason not to, unless you're not going to pay attention and you're going to let it get away from you. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could do something like that with our bodies, with the intake of what we eat? Because the credit card makes it nice and simple to just go through and I can see what I'm spending on everything. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could do that with ourselves? Just like, instead of having to write, that's the hard part. We have to write all of this out. We have to manually calculate it. Whereas this credit card just picks it all up for you. So it's a very similar idea, kind of at the end of the day. It's just like keeping a book of numbers. So what the credit card does for us with its online system and with our bill statements is the same idea of what I'm going to be doing with tracking things. It's just like an itemized list of all the numbers that are going into it. So I think that's a kind of a neat way to look at it. Unfortunately, we don't have the technology to track everything that goes into our body like a credit card would.
Not yet.
But we can do it manually. So that's kind of going to be what that is. Do you have any kind of quick fire, just generalized sort of tips for maybe overcoming stalls? I know the biggest thing is that it's different for everybody. So it really depends on who you are, kind of what you got going on, medically, and what's available to you as a person. So it's not like a, one trick fixes everybody. But I think definitely for sure what you mentioned about tracking is going to be a good idea for most people to kind of help figure out why they're stalling. And from what I've gathered from you, I would also kind of take a guess here and say that counting your steps and making sure you're getting at least those 10,000 every day would be another good way to kind of start hopefully kicking yourself out of a stall. I think the logic behind the 10,000 steps is that after you've done 10,000 steps for the day is when your body is in fat burning mode. Is that accurate?
No, actually. So the reason why it's very much encouraged within, this is not just with very specific communities, the broader fitness community tend to generally agree on getting a minimum of between 8 to 10,000 steps a day. And the reason for that is the data has been very, very, very clear on the nutrition side of things helps significantly. Exercise helps somewhat. Not as much as people think, right? The equation there is more biased towards the nutrition side of things when it comes to weight loss, unless you're doing a ton of aerobic exercise, which most people do not do. A lot of the weight loss, a lot of what supplements the weight loss that you're going to get from nutrition and exercise is getting a requisite amount of activity per day. Because what most people really will realize is they might spend 20 to 45 minutes in the gym doing exercise, and they think that that activity burns a lot of calories, and it doesn't. What burns calories is actually the things that you do throughout the day, right? You have you mentioned earlier, your resting your resting metabolism, and that's just the amount of calories that it takes your body to keep you alive. Right. And that's going to vary anywhere between 1,000 to like maybe 1,200 to 1,500 or so between men and women. The rest of that calorie expenditure is going to come from, we call it non-exercise activity expenditure, right? Or thermogenesis. We call it NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Just a very fancy way of saying the calories that you burn, that you expend, that you're not using while you're exercising. And that comes from just your daily movements, right? You and I talking, me doing all of these gestures with my hand, me getting up from out of this chair, me walking the 10,000 steps. All of those go into that non-exercise activity bucket. And what the research has found is that most people, especially here in the West is very notorious for this because we have a lot of 9-to-5ers sitting on a desk job. We call them desk jockeys, right? We sit in front of a computer all day, 9 to 5. And then what happens when we get home? We're so exhausted to do anything else that we sit on the couch, have dinner on the couch, and sit some more. We are a population of Westerners that are sitting for the majority of our lives, sitting and laying down. We barely do anything else in terms of activity besides sitting and laying down, and the structured exercise that we do only accounts for maybe 20 to 45 minutes throughout the day, 2 to 3 times a week, right? And the reason why we've encouraged a lot of people to get at least a minimum of 8 to 10,000 steps a day is because that increases the amount of calories that you burn throughout the day. And that's what's going to supplement your weight loss significantly, even more so than structured exercise, right? Than weight training 2 to 3 times a week, because that walking 10,000 steps a day is an aerobic type of exercise, right? Where you're going to get the most amount of calorie expenditure regardless. Right? And so that's why we've encouraged a lot of people to track their steps along with tracking their nutrition. I've worked with a handful of clients in the past where the only thing that we changed was them getting an extra 1,000 to 2,000 steps per day. There's a lot of people out there, people that are just beginning in their weight loss journey, who may be uncomfortable going to the gym or don't have any other kind of equipment or don't have any idea of how to exercise. The best thing for them to walk, especially if you're somebody who's got a ton of weight to lose, the best thing that you could do is to try and get some steps. Right. And that does wonders for you, right? Just getting an extra, because most Americans will average, I think, anywhere between 4,000 to 5,000 steps a day, right? Even if you're getting anywhere between 7 to 8, let's just say you went from 4,000 to 6, that's a 50% increase, right? And so even just that, an extra 2,000, right? Starting small, just like with everything else, right? Progressively overloading with time as you're able to, makes a significant amount of difference. And so throughout like the 2+ decades that I've been in this industry, the most impact that I've seen from the weight loss side of things is people tracking their calories meticulously and then getting anywhere between 8 to 10,000 steps per day. And that's the most significant from those two things. I've seen the most significant impact on people's weight loss, their daily quality of living, their body composition, everything, right? Like now, obviously, the data on stress management, on sleep, and the psychological relationship between exercise and food in general is also a big impact. But like that's a different rabbit hole that we might be able to go down to sometime in the future. But like those big ticket items are always going to be: are you tracking your nutrition meticulously? And are you getting at least your requisite steps for the day? Anywhere between 8 to 10,000. So like that, like you asked for like fast suggestions, and I gave you a long answer, but the steps are a big deal. The steps are very much a big deal.
Gotcha. No, that's perfect. I really appreciate it. But yeah, and I wanted to mention again for people who may be tuning in now, tracking meticulously is daunting. To look at that, to try and consider how that works, it's a little bit intimidating. So if you weren't here for the start of the stream, one thing that Jay mentioned was what his in-laws did, rather than, jumping straight into it with this tracking thing, is they started with Factor.
Yes.
And I think I've heard very positive feedback about Factor in the past before, even now. So I definitely think that is a great idea. If you're like me and tracking is just like, I hate it and I want to pull my hair out, and maybe you're not ready to finally buckle down and say, hey, I need to do this because I've tried, these other things that I was pretty dang sure were going to do it for me, and they just didn't. If you're not quite in my position yet, or if you are in my position but you don't want to track still, whichever it may be, trying something like Factor, I think it's a great idea. That's something that I've wanted to do in the past too, and I'm still considering it. Not quite there yet. I would want to talk to Nate about that and kind of figure out what the grocery bill would be looking like if we decided to go that route. But it's definitely not something I'm writing off, because I absolutely think it's extremely important. One thing my grandma used to tell me growing up is that Americans are like, we're taught to overeat. We're almost encouraged to do it because, I mean, it's just like a marketing ploy from all these fast food places. They want you to spend more money. They want you to get more of their junk. The more that you spend there, the happier they are. So Americans have it almost ingrained in them to just buy more. We have the options to supersize meals and stuff like that, or we used to. I think McDonald's has taken that away now, but it was a big thing for a long time. So figuring out how much we actually are supposed to be eating when it comes to portions, first off, it can shock and amaze you. At least I'm assuming, because I haven't done Factor yet, but I'm assuming because I've seen the commercials and I've seen the little like trays that they come in, and it doesn't look like a lot of food, but it is nutritionally sound. It is designed to be that way, to be a perfectly portioned little meal.
Yeah.
So, that's just one thing to keep in mind, is that if you aren't willing or able yet to take the jump into just straight up tracking every single little thing, that might be an option.
Yeah.
And I might end up going that route. It depends on how difficult this ends up being for me, which I've already got like the kitchen scale and stuff, because I have started these things before. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get it figured out. But either way, I might try Factor anyways, just to kind of help change my mindset, because it could help dramatically.
Yeah. And as far as like other tips and tricks, if financially the Factor route, the meal prep service, isn't something that you can consider because you don't have the budget for it, what I do with a lot of my clients is, if they're just starting out on tracking, we don't throw everything in the kitchen sink at them. I might just ask them to, like, hey, in the beginning, just let me know what you're eating throughout the week. You don't have to bust out the scale. You don't have to weigh anything. Just everything that goes into your mouth. I want you to keep your journal. You don't even have to weigh it. I got 1 apple. I got a bagel. Right. For lunch, I had a salad. Had a packet of dressing. Right. Grilled chicken. For dinner, had some pizza. You have to weigh anything. But I do want to know what you're eating. And what that does is twofold, right? It starts you on, because it is technically tracking, without overwhelming you. It gets you into the habit slowly but surely. Just like with a lot of skill, right? With a lot of different types of skills, you don't go in there running like sub 4 second 40s or sub 5 second 40s, right? Like you have to start slowly, because tracking is a skill just like with everything else. And you have to start with like the smallest achievable thing. And sometimes for people, that just might be writing down what they eat throughout the day. And if you're working with a coach, the great thing about that is it lets me know, okay, Cass likes eating X, Y, and Z type of food. And so when I inevitably transition you from just tracking on your journal to maybe now we're just going to track calories, nothing else, I know exactly the types of foods that you like to eat. And that's useful information for both me and for you, because that means I can tailor your plan to the types of foods that you already like to eat. I don't care if people think that the carnivore thing is the best thing since sliced bread and it cures cancer. It's not going to work for you if you don't like to eat meat. I love carnivore. I like steak. I like meat. I am very minimalist. I can have steak, salt, butter, some thyme or some other herbs on my steak, and that's it. And I'm happy with that. I love steak. I love butter. I like eggs. I like fish. I like chicken. Right? I can do carnivore and never get tired of it. But for a lot of people, that's not going to work. So even if I think that carnivore is the best thing since sliced bread, if you don't like it, it's not going to work for you. And that's one of the issues that I find with folks and with coaches in general, is they get into this tunnel vision mindset where it's like, I heard factor cures disease, or I heard carnivore cures cancer, so I'm gonna eat carnivore. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Nothing else is gonna work. It's not gonna work for you if you don't like it. And so what you journaling tells me as a coach is like, okay, Cass maybe likes to eat a little bit more meat. Her carbs are very moderate and low fat. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a high protein, moderate carb, low fat diet for you, because that's what you already like to eat. The only thing that we're going to modify is now you might start tracking your calories. And then once you've gotten to the habit, okay, Cass knows how to journal. Now she knows how to track calories and read food labels. Now we bust out the scale. Right? Now she's going to start measuring. And in the beginning, we might just measure your protein, right? Your macros, right? If you're measuring your protein, your fat, and your carbs, we might just start with your protein, right? And let carbs and fat fall where they may, as long as we fit it within the 2,000 calorie paradigm, or like your calorie restriction paradigm. Right? We add these variables slowly but surely so that we don't overwhelm you, so that you develop those skills. You're able to flex and contract those muscles slowly but surely over time, and you adapt to it slowly but surely over time, and it doesn't overwhelm you. Right? So I would say that if you're overwhelmed with the idea of a tracking, you've never done it before, and you can't afford, like you can't budget a meal prep service, then that would be your next best bet. Start things off slowly, just like with any skill. Don't come out 100% running out the gate. I'm sure you all have heard before that when it comes to fitness and nutrition, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint, because it has to turn into a lifestyle. It can't be something that you do for 3 months and then you go back to your old habits, because old habits will bring you back old results. So start slow. Just keep a food journal. And after you've been very comfortable doing that for a few weeks or a month or so, then you could, okay, add another variable in there. Let's start tracking calories. All right. And then once you're comfortable doing that, start tracking calories and protein. And then you go from there. Right. Slowly but surely. If you've been eating one way for an entire lifetime, from your childhood to your teens, to your 20s, to your 30s, it's going to take a significant amount of time in order to build up those new good habits, in order to build up those new good skills. Right? So don't think that you have to do everything at once, because you might find yourself in that position where it's causing you significant anxiety and stress, right? And then you just give up on it. And that's definitely what we don't want to happen. So if I had to give another tip, it's that. Start things slowly, just like with everything, just with all other skills, one variable at a time.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Definitely think some of these tips are fantastic. We've had a great conversation on the subject of stalling out and how to kind of, hopefully get back on track. One thing I want to add into what you were just saying, another way that my brain kept thinking of as you were going through it, you got to learn to crawl before you can walk. You got to learn to walk before you can run. So that's one other way to kind of just cement that in your brain if it helps anybody. Yeah, and that was all I've got. I think I'm ready to get back on track with this. I am still, I honestly might just go the factor route by the end of it. I want to try this first, tracking meticulously on my own, but I also really have been very interested in factor for a while now. And another thing that I think factor would be great for is giving me meal ideas. So like, because that's one thing. That's one thing that I know a lot of people run into when they're on a diet. Like you said, it's easy for you to do that very simple, just meat and eggs because you love those things. If you're somebody who just doesn't really, love that as much and you want more ideas because you're like, hey, I'm bored to death of eating the same thing every day. Factor or things like it can give you some great ideas to kind of help jumpstart you into some new meals and finding some healthier suggestions. So that's another reason that I've been considering factor, because Nate and I tried to go through AI to find some ideas too, and it just we got a few, but it didn't really do too much at the end of the day. It was kind of just too much all at once. I think it was like, here's these 10 new meals to try, and 10 meals may not sound like a lot, but when each of those 10 meals has 10 ingredients, they build up quick.
Yes, they do.
So yeah, that was all I had for this. Give my updates. I've got my plans for moving forward here. We've gone over some great tips and tricks and ideas on how to kind of handle stalls and mindset. I think you've gone through some fantastic ideas for how to get people, or how people can, get into a better mindset with this stuff. One of the biggest being, and this is a personal story from me. I have a friend who went on something called a starvation diet for a while, which is you eat once every other day. And it was suggested by his doctor, so that's why he did it. So, made sense. And he lost 80 pounds in 3 months, but then he stopped doing it, and then he stopped paying any attention to anything again and gained it all back. And now he is diabetic, like a fully officially diabetic, because he was...
Old habits bring back old results.
Yeah, he was pre-diabetic, and that's why the doctor suggested it in the first place. So now he's got to deal with that. But that's just one of many examples of people who have gone through this. It's very hard to break old habits. My family grew up on mostly fast food, so that's one of the habits I have to learn to, get over and jump that hurdle. And so that was basically all I had planned for this stream. If you've got anything else you want to throw in just to kind of tie us up, go for it. Otherwise, I don't mind saying just hi to everybody. We only have a couple comments, so quick round of chat shout outs to kind of kick things out here. But if you have anything else you want to add, please go ahead, and then we'll do the chat shout outs and wrap it up.
Yeah, last thing I'll add is that for anybody who stalled, just like what Cassie did, right? You have to pivot. In crypto, a lot of you guys are crypto bros and crypto gals. We don't stick to losing trades. And if Cassie was like, carnivore's supposed to work, but I'm not losing weight, I'm just going to keep doing it. And then she just keeps doing it and nothing happens. We don't stick to losing trades. If nothing is changing and you want something to change, then something has to change as well. Right? So that's the last thing I'll say on that. If you've stalled, then that's an indicator that the things that you are doing, or the combination of things that you're doing, are probably not working, and you should probably considering changing something or to pivot into something else entirely. Right? So the fact that you realize that and you're willing to pivot is what's going to propel you forward and build momentum into the next phase of your weight loss. So
awesome. Sounds great. And thank you so much. I always appreciate encouraging words. And so I really love hearing that. It helps me really cement it in my mind of like, yes, this is the next right step to take. This is the way to go. All right. So with that said, we do have a chat here that apparently came in at 12:38 in the morning on Twitter. I'm assuming Twitter's goes off of time zones and just puts it down for whatever time zone the person's in. But this was not scheduled until like 5. So this definitely did not come through at that time for us. But anyways, we've got Downtown Benny here, and he says, "Hey guys, just wanted to say hello and thank you for what you do." Awesome. Thank you so much, Benny. It's great to see you. And then we've got our usual, who was the first comment on the YouTube side, Centurion54X says, "What's up, Degens?" What's up, Centurion? great to see you again. And I still remember meeting up with you in Vegas. It was awesome time. No Money Mike, he says, sup. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
What's up, buddy? Good to see you.
We got Nate the Great. He says, what's good, DRT? Well, weight loss is good. Crypto is good. Figuring out what's stalling you and making sure you get past it, that's also good. So I hope you're doing good, Nate the Great. And it's great to see you. And last but not least, we got Funk Master Hex. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. With the happy little whiskey glass at the end, as usual. Great to see you, Funk Master. Thank you for tuning in. All right, guys. With that said, that was everything we wanted to go over. I am going to get another stream, hopefully. I can't guarantee it yet because I do have to talk to the guests that I want to get on and get confirmation from them. So I'm hoping for either this Thursday or next Thursday. But if not one of those 2 days, I will hopefully figure out a day and get the a new guest on with us pretty soon to talk about their health journey, because they are, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but they are somebody who's been very much encouraging to me. Seen them around a few times, chatted with them a couple times, and I really would love to get them on and just pick their brain about their journey and, you know, really get some good encouraging stuff out there, because they are a very good and encouraging person, and it would be awesome to have them on with us. So other than that, we've got our usual shows throughout the week. Wednesday, we're going to be doing, I think it's a Whiskey Wednesday this time around. And then we got book club on Friday. Not sure what the book will be yet, but that'll be in our book club Telegram. So if you're not in that, go ahead and join up. I am not Will. I do not have 8,000 links, so I apologize. But the book club Telegram, you can find that through our regular Telegram. If you need the link, just, tag Will. He'll grab it for you. That is not one that I put in the description yet. So that is something I need to do. I'm going to add that to my list. All right. And then that was all I had for today, folks. Thank you all for joining. And we are going to get on out of here. Until next time.